Welcome to day 4 of the Understanding Wealth series and session. My name is Mensah. I'm excited to be with you here today. I'm excited because today is going to be a lot more exciting than we've had in the last 3 days. I'm honored to be with you here, and I want to say that I'm glad to come into your homes. I don't know where you're watching from. And before we start, I want you to do 2 things. First of all, reach out to someone that you know that could benefit or could find this to be valuable, and ask them to join us. Send a tweet, send a message, perhaps call someone. I don't know where you're watching from or what time of the day it is, but reach out to someone. I believe that the more that we can get together and learn together, the more we can change our lives and make a difference in the world. The second thing I want you to do, as always, is get your journal, get your pen, because you're going to be capturing some notes today. Now, over the last 3 days, we've talked about wealth, and we started with the foundation. I'm not going to summarize what we've talked about over the past 3 sessions, but I'm going to very quickly refresh you with what we dealt with yesterday. Now, I'm going to make some assumptions in relation to what I've covered so far. If you're joining for the first time, then you may have to go back and listen to the first, the second, and the third sessions. I think you'll find it really, really informative. If you've been part of this session and this series so far, then I'm going to assume that the tasks and the activities that you were meant to do, you've done them. For example, I'm going to assume that you've already calculated what your net worth is and what your wealth worth is. Now, that's part of what we talked about in day 2. But also, I'm going to assume that from yesterday's session that you've taken some time to write down your financial vision, and you've identified exactly what you need to become financially free. Obviously, using the examples that I gave yesterday. Now, in today's session, we're going to move quite quickly. We started yesterday talking about a part of the entire journey of creating wealth. And one of the things we said was, if you want to create changes in your life, you must know where you are. You must know where you're trying to get to. And then you need a map to get you from your location to your destination. And yesterday we focused on the destination. Today's session, we're going to talk about the plan, the roadmap. Okay, how do I move from here to where I want to be? How do I start journeying towards financial freedom and wealth? Now, because we're going to be talking about a plan, it's going to be an extended session. I'm going to try as much as I can to cover as much as possible in this session, but I may have to split it into bits like we did during the journey. Now, there is a method to my madness. If you've been part of the session from the start, then maybe you can see the method unfold. If you've just joined, then you may have to, like I said at the start, go back and see what we've covered so far. I'm not going to repeat what we've dealt with. I'm going to just move forward. Now, one of the most important things that I found to be really necessary if you're going to transform your life and take your place from wherever you find yourself to the great life that you want is you need a plan. Most people hear wealth and investing and business, and they think it's about a strategy. They think wealth is about an investment vehicle, properties, real estate, gold, silver, bonds, stocks, commodities. It has nothing to do with any of that. Wealth has everything to do with your plan. And so we're going to talk about the plan today and what you need to do. Now, many years ago when I started my journey towards wealth, the first thing I did, as soon as I understood where I was and as soon as I was aware of what I wanted in the future, the first thing I did was to start building wealth and creating wealth. For some of you, you probably think that's the right place to start. I don't agree. My experience has shown that I started wrongly, and it took me some time to go back and make the corrective changes. Now, in engineering, during my engineering days, whenever we constructed a building, we always started with a foundation. And Any great contractor would tell you, or any great engineer or architect would tell you, that the foundation of a building is the most important part of the entire structure. As a matter of fact, the taller the building has to be, the more you have to construct a deeper foundation. Now, what we're doing now is we're going to be constructing your financial future. And I want this to be a really remarkable, grand building that people can see from afar, and they stand and they awe at what you've created. Now, to do that, we must begin with the right foundation. So, if you were to imagine this to be a tall building, in this case, I'm using this as a way of representing what your future will be, because I see great things in the future for you. I see success, I see good health, I see happiness, I see wealth, I see prosperity, I see good fortune. And so I use this to represent your life, which is a tall, grand building, perhaps one of the iconic buildings that people will talk about for years to come. However, to construct this building, what we need to do first is construct what we call a foundation with piles that go deep into the soil. You must build on solid foundation. And so the first part of the plan, and the first place to start in your plan to creating wealth, it's not about accumulating wealth. It's the foundation. Now, what is the foundation? How do you even start? And there are three parts to the plan we're going to talk about today. The first is about protection. The second is going to be about safety and security. And then the third, and in my opinion, the most exciting part, is going to be about how you now create wealth, which is about investing, which is about multiplication. Now, to create wealth, to multiply wealth, to protect wealth, and then, if you choose to pass it on to the next generation, you require different skills and tools. We're going to start with protection. Now, for many of you, you're probably thinking, what is there to protect, and why do we begin with protection? It kind of seems natural that first of all you have to create before you protect. And I don't disagree with that ideology or that perspective. The second plan is then, how do I secure and how do I provide safety in my plan? And number three is then, how do I then create wealth? Now imagine, for example, like we did yesterday and we did 2 days ago, we started by using the analogy of a journey. We said life is like a journey. And we said, if you want to become financially free, the journey analogy is a great place to start. And so we talked about your location, your destination, and the journey, the roadmap. In the same way, if you were to just assume, for example, that you were going to travel from one city, I don't know where you're watching from, but if I was going to travel from London, England, all the way down to Edinburgh in Scotland, I would need a vehicle to get me there, yes. I would need a plan, a roadmap to get me there, absolutely. But one of the most important things I need is protection. In other words, if I'm stopped by the police, they're going to ask me for a specific information. They're not going to ask me specifically what I'm going to do in Edinburgh, or specifically what area of London I traveled from. They're going to ask me for a specific set of information. So we're going to begin with protection. Now, to start with protection, you might be thinking, like I did for so long, why do I need to protect myself? So your first question might be why? Your second question might be what? And you might be thinking about how. Now, these are three questions that I'm going to try and answer. They're very important. Why do you need to protect yourself before you begin the journey of wealth? Very simple. You're trying to protect your focus. Say that again. Protection is important because you're trying to protect your focus. Now, if you drive and the next time you go into the car, I want you to just make an observation. The windscreen of the car occupies the entire width of the car, but the side view mirror and the rear view mirror are only that big. The question is why? Very simple. All of your focus is meant to be in the direction that you're traveling in. Now, for some of you that are just starting the journey of wealth, like I did, you don't have much to protect. You're probably thinking, well, I don't have any wealth. I don't have money to protect, so I don't really see how this applies to me. Just stay tuned. Number one, the why is because you're protecting your focus. Along the journey towards creating wealth and a prosperous life, you will encounter obstacles. Now, if you've ever driven on a major motorway, occasionally you might see a car parked on the side. The car may be broken down, and that represents how life is for a lot of people. We begin the journey, we run into an obstacle because we hadn't planned appropriately, maybe because we had no protection. We got pulled to the side and we park. We stay stuck. And many people never resume that journey again. They stay there for the rest of their lives. Why? They had no protection. So you protect yourself because you want to maintain your focus towards that vision that we created yesterday, towards that goal we established yesterday, so that whatever happens, you keep marching in the direction of your dreams. Now, you might be asking, how do I provide protection? It's a good question. There are a number of ways of doing this. I found that the three most important ways is insurance, a will, or trust. Very simple. Insurance is the most important. You might be thinking, what's there to insure? I don't have any wealth. I haven't built a fortune. No, you haven't, but you're about to. But more importantly, it's not for you. You see, the journey is not all about you. You're thinking too much about yourself. Now, if you have dependents, if you have a family, if you have people that look up to you, then you have a responsibility beyond yourself. It's not about you. Now, what do you protect and how do you begin that journey? The first thing you do in terms of protection is insurance. And you do that by providing life insurance, health insurance, personal insurance, and business insurance. I'm going to deal with each of those very quickly. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is not as exciting as I thought it would be. Stay tuned. You understand in a short while why we begin with protection. We all hope for long life. That's the prayer we have every morning. We wish to see a better future. But you and I, we don't understand, and we will never understand how life works completely. And so we don't know when we're going to be called home. But we have a responsibility, especially if we have people who look up to us and people who depend on us. Now, I've seen so many people who worked really hard all their lives, labored. They had the best intentions for their family, but as soon as they were gone, the lifestyle, the quality of life of the family declined badly. Reason? There was no protection. So life insurance is not about you, it's about the people who depend on you. In other words, you want to provide life insurance to guarantee that should something happen to you along this journey, the people you love very much and the people perhaps you're working so hard to serve and to make their life a great experience, you want to make sure they can maintain that lifestyle that you would have wished that they could have had you been alive. So life insurance is where we start. Health insurance is the second form of insurance that you must consider. Here in England, we have the NHS. It's very good, yes. I don't know where and how good it might be where you're watching from, but nonetheless, you can't predict what could happen. You might have a critical illness. We don't pray for that. We hope for great health and good health. But you and I have a responsibility to make sure that we protect ourselves. Now, when I started my journey, I had a job. I worked for a company. Because I worked for a company and because I had a job, that was my only source of income. So the only way I could earn was if I was healthy enough to work. So if I couldn't work, I couldn't earn. But if I couldn't earn, my expenses didn't disappear. And the same applies to many of you watching. So what we try to do is provide a level of insurance to cover those unforeseen catastrophic health issues that ensure that if something happens along the journey, remember this journey we're taking is going to be a long journey. We have a whole lifetime for this journey, but we have a fixed timeline we've given ourselves to become financially free. That period we said yesterday had to be less than 10 years. But as we journey to financial freedom, we want to make sure that should something happen along the way, it doesn't stop your ability to still become financially free. So here is my recommendation. If you have a job and if you work for a company, and many companies offer a reduced benefits package, it gives you life insurance as an option and health insurance as an option, take it. Secure your future based on making the decisions today. It's about life. It's about health. Once you have life and health insurance covered, you've provided a level of protection that solidifies one of the pillars of the foundation of your life. The next is personal insurance. Most people perhaps don't get the importance of this, but I'll share this because if you have already started to create a level of wealth, perhaps you have a home and you've been paying off that home for a while and you've been reducing the debt, and let's say for example you've built up a level of equity in the home. If the home is in your name, then the home is at risk. All that equity you have is at risk. If something were to go wrong, say third-party injury, someone could come after the equity you have in that property. Now, if, for example, your home is fully mortgaged and a majority of your mortgage is debt, then the bank owes and owns the home. There's nothing anyone can take. It's the bank's money. But if you've paid down your debt and you have a lot of equity, maybe in savings, maybe in a home, maybe in a business, if it's under your name, you have to protect it. Now, one of the great things about wealth is understanding how the wealthy think and what they do. The wealthy don't have things of value, of considerable value in their names. Now, I didn't understand this when I started my journey. In hindsight, I could have done a few things differently. I've been making remedial steps to change all of that. The wealthy don't store, don't save, don't buy things in their name simply because you have vultures out there who might come to take a portion or a piece of what you've worked so hard to create. So the personal liability insurance aspect covers where you have things in your name. What you don't want is a situation whereby what you've worked for 10, 15 years becomes someone else's gain, whatever you want to call that. As a result of maybe a decision you've made that has caused injury to someone else. So my recommendation is if you have anything of value, provide yourself with personal insurance. The business insurance side, I'm not going to talk about that in detail. I think if you own a business, if you own a company, if you run a corporation, that is something you should already have to make sure that you provide third-party coverage. Now, this deals with the protection side. It's simple, it's easy. For something as simple as say 50 or 55 pounds, whatever the equivalent might be, you can provide health and life insurance. Now, that's a meal. That's a meal you would normally spend, the weekend. But making that decision can keep your focus towards the future. Now, over the next 30 days, as we talk about wealth, one of the things you will hear very often is the importance of you having a wealthy mindset, because wealth begins in your thoughts. And many people, and most people, spend a lot of time worrying. Albert Einstein said that worrying is the wrong use of the imagination. We all use our imagination and our mind. Some use it to create things that become reality and create value for ourselves and other people. And other people use the mind just to worry. Now, by providing protection, what you can then do is take that time, all that energy that would have been assigned to thinking about what could go wrong, you can focus all that on being creative, on creating wealth. Now that's protection. Very quickly, we're going to move very quickly now to the next stage. The next part of the journey is you have to provide what I call safety and security. Now this is your safety and your security plan. We're going to deal with both of them slightly separately. We'll start with safety. Why do you need a safety plan? Well, it's simple. You want to make sure that you can protect yourself in the present. Your safety plan deals with the present. Your security plan deals with the future. So you want to protect your present and you want to protect your future. Now, all of this is happening before you start accumulating wealth. Safety occurs, and if we ask the same questions, how, what, why? Why is I'm trying to protect my present. How and what do you need to do? Very simple. When I began the journey, I'm going to just clean this out very quickly so I can write here. But when I began my journey, one of the things I found was I had reduced my expenses. I explained this in more detail in yesterday's session, but I had reduced my expenses so that my wealth ratio was 1. In other words, I had to secure enough income from my investments to cover my expenses. At a wealth ratio of 1, I was able to start channeling my time and my energy, my focus to creating more wealth. I was financially free, but I had little or no contingency. And I found that for a number of months after I had achieved financial freedom, I was worried. I was still working for a company, but I was financially free. Part of the reason I didn't want to let go of the job was because of security. You know, from a job, you have the steady income, providing you have good health and you work hard and you show up every day. But I couldn't let go of that security because although I had an income source that was equivalent to my expenses, it was still a single income source. I hadn't developed multiple sources of income. Now, as we go along, you're going to hear me talk about this word a lot. Multiple sources of income streams. That's the key to multiplying wealth. This is used for multiplying wealth. I hadn't developed multiple sources of income streams. And as a result of that, I had this fear factor. To eliminate that fear factor, what I had to do was sit down and make a decision. The decision I made was that my expenses, because I needed to have income from these expenses, to cover these expenses, I decided that I would set aside 12 months of my expenses. And so here is my recommendation to you. To provide safety for your present, you need between 6 and 12 months of your expenses set aside to cover emergencies, to cover unforeseen circumstances. Now, some people say if you have a family, this should be £5,000 plus £1,000 or £1,500 for every dependent. Now, it depends on your lifestyle, obviously, because if you're a family where you live frugally, maybe £1,000 will be enough. If you're a family where you live more flamboyantly, maybe you might need to increase that to 2,000. But you should decide the amount. In my case, I thought between 6 and 12 months was sufficient. I set aside 12 months of expenses. Now, this meant that for an entire year, should something have gone wrong, I wouldn't have to panic. Now, here is the reason why this is important. Most people begin this journey towards wealth and they get to a wealth ratio of 1. They can quit their jobs. They do quit their jobs. They begin the journey towards wealth and multiplying wealth. But something happens. Maybe there's a delay in the income coming in from their assets or investments, and they panic. What most people do, they run back to a job. They run back to what we call security and certainty, because they can't deal with the uncertainty. But part of the reason for that is because they hadn't planned. They had nothing set aside to cover the possibility of something going wrong. If you set aside between 6 and 12 months of expenses, what that does for you, it allows you to stay calm. Now, there are 2 ways of dealing with things in life. You can react or you can respond. You react when you think with your emotions. You respond when you think from your emotions. Now, reacting is a result of lack of planning. So things happen and then you react. Now, when you react to whatever has happened, the external stimuli is in control. When you respond, it comes from a place of calmness and peace because you've planned. Now, you may not have all the answers, but you've done some planning. You've expected it to happen. And so you react from a place of calmness, which means your decisions are better. You are in control, not the external circumstances. So, by setting aside some allowance, 6 months in your case, you know yourself better. You might decide I only need 3 months. Whatever makes you sleep well at night, I'm happy with that. You decide. This amount is then to cover emergencies should something happen. Now, we hope and we expect that we wouldn't have any catastrophic emergencies, and therefore one of the things you must do then is ask yourself, well, how do I provide this coverage? Now, there are 2 ways. I'll share both. The first is through what I call equity. Equity in terms of cash. The second is through debt, using what we call OPM. When I started my journey, I only understood cash. So in my mind, I started by saving what I expected, the 12 months of expenses, and I was going to put it in a bank account and let it sit there for a while. The trouble with that approach is emergencies, they don't occur every single month, but also they don't occur every single year. And so what I found was I was saving for the long term, which violated one of the principles of creating wealth. The wealthy don't save actively. Now, when you're setting aside between 6 and 12 months of emergency funds, you are saving actively. Why? Because in many cases, what you find is, since we've set a 10-year goal to achieve financial freedom, what you find is in many cases, even when you achieve financial freedom, that cash sits in the account. So you might be saving for more than 10 years, which is a long time to save. Now, yesterday I talked about the principle of the rule of 72, which explains how quickly your money can double in value, but also how quickly you can use the same equation to show how we can reduce by half its value. Saving is an obsolete way to creating wealth, but also the more you save, the purchasing power of whatever you're saving in, whatever that money is represented in, currency, whatever the currency of the realm where you're watching from might be, the value of that money is declining. In other words, the purchasing power of the money is reducing. Why? Because the banks around the world and the governments around the world are printing money every day. They're printing more than you can save. So the more you save, the poorer you become. So I decided after a number of months that I had to change something. So here is my recommendation to you. Think about this and decide what you think is best. Number one, you can save in cash. You can save money in what we call currency. You could put it in a different account separate to your normal account so that you don't see it, and it sits there until you need it. Number one. Number two, rather than save 6 months, say for example, if you were doing 6 months, rather than save the entire 6 months in cash, what you could choose to do is save 2 months in cash, and the remaining 4 months, you move that into a different monetary currency. Money, what we call money, the coin of the realm, wherever you're watching from, pounds, here in England, it could be dollars. That is currency. It's a form of money, but it's not the only form of money. Gold is a form of money. Silver is a form of money. There are commodities that you can convert your money into. Now, because you're holding that money for a long time, you're better off having it in a form that can retain its value. One of those is gold, one of those is silver. And over the past 10 years, silver and gold have maintained their value and they've increased in value. Now, I don't know what will happen in the next 10 years. I'm not suggesting that you convert your money to gold. I'm saying it could be a better option. Remember that the purpose of money is to multiply itself or to move into another form that can maintain its value or that can multiply itself. So I would say one option is save money. Second option is take a portion of what you would have saved, maybe 80%, convert that into gold or silver. Speak to someone quite knowledgeable about both options so you can see the projection for the next 10 years. I like gold and silver because you can convert it back to money very quickly. And silver is perishable. It's a consumable. I shouldn't say perishable because it's not. It's a product. But silver is consumable, and as a result of that, because we consume silver, there's always a demand supply. Silver has been reducing in availability around the world. The demand has been increasing, the availability has been decreasing. So as a result of that, the power of the silver commodity has been quite interestingly good. Gold, on the other hand, has always increased in value over the past 10 years. So I'll let you decide what you think is best, but do your research, study, seek wisdom, seek good counsel before you make a decision. The third is debt. I know this sounds rather counterintuitive. You might be thinking, I can't believe you're asking me to use debt, but hear me out. I'll talk about debt further on in the world session, but I'll say this, that there is good debt, there is bad debt. As a summary, good debt is the debt you get into to help you, number one, acquire assets, investments, businesses that create income and that make you wealthier, increases your net worth, but also increases your wealth worth. Bad debt is personal debt that you get into to buy liabilities that decrease or depreciate in value, but they cause an expense, so they make you poorer, and unfortunately they put you in a position whereby they hold you back from becoming the best that you can be. By debt, I'm talking about other people's money. One of the advantages that the wealthy use over the poor is simply they understand how to use debt and taxes. It's really that simple. And it's not, this knowledge is not exclusive to a small selected group. It's available everywhere. You just have to study it. And it can be used by anyone. If you're going to be saving for 10 years, now consider this. One option is simply get a credit card. A credit card that you never get to use. Now, to apply this option, you need a lot of control. It requires a lot of integrity in yourself. If you got a credit card for the same amount that you would have been saving, but you never use that card, you put it somewhere safe, it's available anytime you need it. This simply means rather than saving money for 10 years, that you've covered that need for emergency using other people's money, but you don't get to spend it, so there are no charges. There are no interest rates because you never use the card. What you can do then is take whatever would have been the 10 years of saving, or rather the 6 to 12 months of expenses which you would have saved for 10 years. In the 10-year period, you could have invested that. Now think about this, it's powerful. Imagine what you could do. Let's assume, for example, that when you've done your total amount is £10,000. Imagine what you could do with £10,000 in 10 years. Now, £10,000, if you were to put this in the bank is paying 0.025%. My bank, I don't know about your bank. £10,000, 0.025%. This simply means that the bank will only give me £250 every year. So in 10 years, I'll make 2,500, something in that region. I may have got my calculation wrong, but it doesn't matter. At the end of 10 years, I would have 2,500 in addition to my 10,000. However, if you were with me yesterday, then I explained how the rule of 72 works. I said if you were to take 72 and you had a rate of return from an investment of say 12%, you divide 72 by 12 and that will give you 6. So it means if you were to invest in a product, service, whatever that might be, business, that gave you a 12% return on your money, then in 6 years you could double your money. But I also said that if you wanted to see how quickly your money could reduce in value, then you simply have to take the same number 72 and divide by inflation. Now, inflation in 2008 was 2%. Inflation in 2017 is 2.9% in London. In London, I don't know what it might be where you're watching from. So if you're saving for 10 years, we'll just assume it's 3%. 72 divided by 3 is 24. Meaning, in 24 months, potentially, the purchasing power of your money would have reduced by half its value. Now, this is not textbook, but it gives you an indication. This is just an indication. This simply means, although you have 12,500, if we were to apply the rule of 72, it means that the purchasing power of this money you have, 12,250, could only be worth 6,125 in terms of purchasing power. Purchasing power in just a short period of time, 24 months. Now let's just assume it wasn't 24 months. Let's assume it's actually the entire 10 years. The £12,125 that you would have declined in value and the purchasing power would have reduced. However, if you gave me £10,000 and I was to invest that £10,000 in an investment, let's assume I put that in an investment that paid 10% compounded. Now, can you imagine what you would have at the end of 10 years? So my recommendation is this. You might want to consider using debt. Take that savings that you would have saved and put that towards investing. Also, if you are in debt, then use that 10 years of available cash and pay towards your debt and pay off your debt so that you're debt free. This is just 3 options. Now, I've spent some time on this, much longer than I would have wanted to. I'm going to move very quickly now. Now, we've talked about the safety option. The final part is the security option. What are you securing? I said you secure the future. So under the security option, we're talking about the future. And here we're really talking about a concept called asset allocation. If you've started your journey towards wealth recently, like I did a number of years ago, then what you find out is your financial IQ, your financial understanding is still relatively weak. Therefore, there'll be a lot of things that you're still learning. And therefore, a lot of the decisions you make may not be the best decisions possible. Now, even the best financial masters make mistakes. You will make mistakes along the way. One of the things I did when I started my journey in creating wealth is that I took everything and I put everything in one basket. Technically, that is not a wrong strategy if you have high financial IQ. Now, Warren Buffett said that diversification is a protection against ignorance. In other words, if you're not financially intelligent, diversify. But if you're financially intelligent, you apply a principle called focus, which is you flourish in one cause of commitment until you've succeeded. The mistake that I made at the start was taking all of my available resources and putting it in one particular basket. But I hadn't developed my understanding enough to see the wood from the trees, if you want to use that reference. And the trouble also was that I hadn't understood the various terminologies used in investing. But guess what? You can be a great person, you can have great financial understanding, you can have great technical ability, you can be a really smart person, you can make the right decisions, but you can't control the markets. All you can control is yourself. So you have a level of control over you, but something could change, because in investing you're dealing with an external market. So you might still lose. For that reason, we say you must begin with what we call asset allocation before you start creating wealth. And this happens in a simple way. You have 10 eggs. Asset allocation is simply, why don't you take 2 eggs and put in basket 1, take 2 eggs and put in basket 2, and then take the remaining 6 eggs and actually put in basket 3. That's asset allocation. Now at the early stage, how do you do this? The simple way that I recommend that you can do this is simply through what we call a pension scheme. A pension scheme, which is really a pre-tax scheme. Most people are familiar with a pension scheme. A pension scheme is your protection for the future. You take a portion of what you earn, you set it aside. The portion is deducted before you even get your net income, so you don't even get to see it. Now, why I talk about a pension scheme is simply because of the discipline that is taken away from your part. Now, creating wealth requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of delaying of instant gratification. It requires you being completely committed and focused to doing what is right. Now, the pension scheme helps take away all of that extra responsibility from you. The money is taken from your paycheck or pay slip before you see it. But in addition to that, most companies will provide a matching contribution. Maybe if you put in 5%, your employer might put in an extra 5%. So you're getting 10% set aside for the future. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to say something that I think should be said. Although I think the pension scheme perhaps is something you should consider at the start of your journey, it's not something that I actively use today. I've got to be sincere, I've got to be honest. And the reason is simply because over the last number of years, I've obviously increased my level of financial understanding. And I believe that I can provide a better return if I invested my money myself. I can only say that because I can discipline myself, I can delay gratification, and I can do today what I know will guarantee my future. But part of the reason I don't subscribe to a pension scheme is because of the simple principle that I talked about a few minutes ago. A pension scheme is not an investing scheme. It's a savings scheme. But you're saving for the long term, for 30, 40, 50 years. Now, depending on where you're watching from, there is a minimum time frame allocated upon which you cannot get the money back. Now, because I understand the purpose of money, because I have an understanding about wealth, for me that is not a great strategy because I'm giving my money to someone else, but I have to wait for 50 years to be able to use it. In that time, the money continues to decline in value, so whatever I get, when I'm ready to get it, obviously the purchasing power is not the same. But in addition to that, I found from my research and also talking to various people and advisors, there is no end to the fees associated with a pension scheme. Now, I haven't met anyone who can tell me exactly how much I'm going to pay for them to manage my pension account. I haven't met one person. The number of fees keep increasing by the day. Unfortunately, from my research, sometimes it can be as high as 40% of the total income you would have created as a result of putting your money in a pension scheme. And because of all those uncertainties, lack of control, lack of me taking all the risk, because I am the one who takes all the risk. For all of those reasons, I don't invest in a pension, or I don't save in a pension scheme. I take the same percentage amount of 5%, and then I invest in myself, meaning I have to study every day to make sure I'm making the right decisions. Now, I had to say that there, put that out there so you know, obviously being transparent. But I think it's a great place to start when you begin your journey. If you're starting between year 1 and year 5, you need a lot of financial education and study. Now, if you're investing between 2 and 3 hours per day over a 3-year or 5-year period, in 5 years you have a lot of knowledge about the game. You have a lot of knowledge about the vocabulary of money and wealth, and you'll be able to make maybe a similar decision that I've made. But if you're starting the journey, I recommend you start with a pension. Set aside a portion of what you have. Yes, it's a savings scheme, but it's protecting your future. The last thing you want is to put all your eggs in one basket, and the basket is taken away by the foxes, and you lose everything, but you don't have a pension for the future. Now, if you do that, we say you failed in life because you've been ignorant. You haven't just been ignorant, you've gone beyond being ignorant. Ignorance is not knowing something. By listening to this video and by reading books, you're obviously learning. When you ignore advice, we say you're stupid. Ignorance is not knowing something. Stupid is when you disregard or you refuse to follow the advice from people who understand much better than you do. So my recommendation is begin with a pension. It's perfectly fine. As you improve your understanding and improve your awareness, then you can make the decision that you believe is right for you. But asset allocation is a must. Whatever you're going to be investing, take a portion of it, set aside to a pension scheme. My next recommendation is, rather than take the entire balance and put into one investment, ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1 is growth. Number 1 is risk. Wealth is like a slowly cooked meal. Wealth is not a microwaved meal. It's a slowly cooked meal. In other words, creating wealth is boring because it takes time. There is no get rich quick. No, just remove that from your mind. It's slow, meaning in terms of growth, it may not be very sexy, but it's consistent. It's there every time. And what happens is, after so many years, you now see your wealth increase. Now, many of us, especially those who perhaps fall under my, what I'll call my age demographics, we want instant. We want instant. So what we look for normally is high returns. Now, high returns doesn't always mean high risk. In majority of the cases, high returns usually is associated with a little bit of a lack of control on your part, and in most cases, a little bit more risk. Now, if you have more risk, then it means you have more possibility of something going wrong. So you've sorted out your, what I'll call your security for the future in terms of pension. You might then decide, now this could only be 5%. That's okay. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to sit down carefully and think about what I've shared so far about money. Now, I'll talk about money in the coming days to give you more information. But what you find is that if you're allocating so much of your income towards a pension scheme, because you're saving for that longer time, you may want to be smarter about the percentage you put aside. Now, let's say you put 5% towards your pension, you might decide to put, who knows, 10% or 15% towards a risk package, I should say. You might put that towards, say, between 10 and 15 towards maybe an opportunity that provides a higher return, but maybe a little bit more risk. The key thing here is how much are you willing to lose? How much can you lose without falling apart and thinking you've lost everything? You have to be smart in making this decision. And then you can put the balance in the growth buckets or growth baskets. The key thing here is to say this: wealth creation, wealth multiplication, long-term wealth is not sexy. It's boring. Now, a lot of people, as a result of it being a little bit boring, make wrong choices. After a number of years, they think, well, this is not sexy enough, this is not exciting enough, and then they make a wrong decision. They take everything that would have been growing slowly and steadily, and they put in a risk, maybe a high leveraged investment option, and unfortunately they lose everything. The good thing is, first of all, secure your future, and then decide on how you allocate your remaining resources so that you can create wealth. Now, in a way, that deals with the planning section, the first two sections. By doing this, what you've then created is a foundation. It means, number one, you have life insurance, you have health insurance, you have maybe personal insurance. You also have emergency set aside. You've now provided security for the future. The most important thing next is, let's build wealth, let's create it, which is where we then go into the growth and the risk section. So the third part of the planning process that I'm going to talk about now is how you create wealth. And this is where I'm going to summarize and draw to a close today. Wealth creation is fun. It's exciting and it's fun. Part of the reason it's exciting and it's fun is because creativity and creation is the highest expression of who we really are. There's part of us that I call a spirit, and we have to keep creating. We have a nature in us to create, to grow, to increase, to magnify what we have. So creativity is important, and the more we create wealth, the more we start to use a lot of our mental faculties, and as we use that, it makes the whole process exciting. To create wealth, there are two things you must recognize, that there are two ways of creating wealth. Two ways only. Two ways of making money. Number one, you work for money. In other words, you invest your time to earn money. This method will not lead to wealth. I did this for so many years. Many people do this. As a matter of fact, about 95 or 96% of the population do this. Option one is you work. You work for money. Now with this option, it means that money is the master and you are the servant. So here you are, you're a servant, money is the master. Option one. Option two is money works to create money. In other words, money works for you to create more money. With option two, money is the servant and you are the master. Option two is how wealth is created. And this is what I'm going to focus on over the next few days to show you how you can get money to work for you. About 4% of the population subscribe to this approach. It can be learned like any skill. I started with option one. Many of us will have to start with option one, but the key here is to very quickly reverse the equation. So you begin working for money if you have a job, but over time, what you want to do is change the roles so that money then becomes your servant, you become the master. Now, I'm going to start by saying this. One of the things that I mentioned a number of days ago, I think it was on day 2, or rather day 1, I believe it was day 1, I said that there is a formula for wealth. The formula for wealth, I said, was simple. You earn, the first thing you must do is invest before you spend. This is the formula for wealth. So to create wealth, we have to look at this formula based on, number 1, earning. Number 1, how do I earn more? Number 2, investing. Very important. And number 3 is spending, but more importantly, I call this lifestyle. How do I live? The 3 of these parts of the equation determine how fast you create wealth. So in terms of earning, let's begin with a very simple statement. The statement in terms of earning is that you have 2 options if you want more. If you want to, you can either play what I call defense or you can play offense. My recommendation is you play both. If you want to create wealth, you've got to be willing to play offense and play defense. You play offense by increasing what you earn, by maximizing and multiplying your income. You play defense by living within your means so that you have more to invest. Now, if you play offense, you earn more, you have extra to invest. If you play defense, you spend less, you have more to invest. Both of them are important, but I think applying both is the key. The wealthy focus on playing offense. Why? Because they have developed their financial understanding and they know how to play the game of money. I said a few days ago that wealth is a game. You got to learn how to play the rules of the game. Learn the rules so you can play the game well and win. For many years, I played the game of wealth and money, but I didn't understand the rules. So I was losing. I was like an amateur playing against professionals. I was always going to lose. So the wealthy play offensive about more, creating more, because they've learned the rules. If you're starting your wealth journey, I want you to earn more. But if you don't know the rules, you're losing. So here is my recommendation. Focus more on playing defense, because wealth has more to do with how you live and less about what you earn. I think that's worth repeating. The defense strategy focuses on you living within your means. There are 4 groups of people. I'm going to talk about the top 3 first. For many years, I fell into the group number 1. My expenses, my lifestyle was far greater than my income. I spent more than I earned. And so for that reason, I just stayed poor. I had nothing to invest or save. As I improved my financial understanding, I got myself to a point where my expenses was the same as my income, but I still had nothing to invest or save. And over time, I got myself to a point where my expenses became less than my income. Then I could save and invest. Defense has everything to do with your lifestyle. Wealth, remember what I said? Wealth has less to do with how much you earn. The formula for poverty is this. Poor people earn, then they spend, then they save. And they save actively, which is why they stay poor. I did this for so long. The wealthy, on the other hand, earn, but the first thing they do is invest, and then they spend. So the first activity, earning, is the same. It's not what you earn. You can give me someone who earns £1 million per month, but if they spend £1.5 million, they will not create more wealth than someone who earns minimum wage of £7.50 per hour. It's what you do after you earn. In other words, it's your lifestyle. So in playing defense, it's about you taking control of what you can change. I can't change the weather. I can't change the economy. I can't change my employer. I can influence them, but I can't change them. I can do everything necessary to get more money, but they make the decisions. But the one thing I can change, and the one person I can change right now, is myself, because I have the power to choose. So my recommendation is start playing defense, because that's something you can change immediately whilst you're trying to play offense. Many people are saying, when I earn more money, then I'll start saving and investing. No, you've got to change who you are for you to have more in the future. You've got to change who you are today to have more in the future. Now, to take this a step further, what I'm going to do is start with the offense approach to give you some ideas about how you can earn more if you have a job. I think this will be useful to those who just want to know how much more they can earn, and when and what to do. But I'm going to qualify this by giving you what I call the principles or the philosophies, but I'll also show you the drawbacks of earning more. The wealthy play offense for one reason and one reason alone. They understand that income types vary, and so they work for the best type of income. The wealthy are not working for the same source of income as you and I, or rather as I used to work. Before I used to work for an income source from a job, and a job gives you what we call active income. Wealthy work for leveraged income. Some people call it passive income. And I'm going to just digress a little bit and deal with this, because there's a misconception that all you have to do is find something that pays you passive income and you do nothing. Nothing can be further from the truth. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You have income flying in from checks from all over the place and you do nothing. That's wrong. That's a wrong mindset. The wealthy work hard. Think about this. In the 2017 Forbes list, you have 2,000 plus billionaires. If you look through all of those people on those lists, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, all of these people in the top, say, 20 or top 50, probably all of the billionaires, none of them sits down in the house and money and cash just keeps coming in. They worked hard, very hard. The difference is, with a job, the activity is active, meaning you have to invest your time, you have to invest your presence, you have to invest your knowledge, understanding. It's unleveraged, so it's active. The activity is active. The income is also active. With leveraged sources of income, the activity is leveraged. The income is passive. That's the difference. So it means that you use leverage. Leverage meaning other people's time, other people's money, other people's experiences, other people's wisdom, and other people's knowledge. You use all of these leverage options to achieve your vision and goals. You find people who want to support that vision, and you use all of these resources. That is how the wealthy create wealth. So they're working for leveraged income. If you have a job, it's active. The problem with active income is simply it's the highest taxable form of income. A number of years ago, I saw an interview by Warren Buffett. I found it very fascinating, depending on what side of the the coin you find yourself, you may have been upset by that interview. In the interview, he was talking about taxation, and he was talking about how unfair the tax systems were. But he went along to say that he pays less taxes than the person who cleans and works for him. Now, Warren Buffett is worth 73 billion. And I would imagine this person who works as a cleaner probably earns, who knows, maybe $10 an hour, but she pays more taxes than he does. Now, you might say the system is unfair. Depends on what side of the coin you're on. You know, it favors one party, it doesn't favor the other, but it's not exclusive to a group of people. It's just the way it is. The point of that is simply the person working for Warren Buffett was working for active income, for a job. Warren Buffett is working for leveraged income, and that's the reason why he pays lower taxes. So if you want to create wealth, you've got to understand one simple question. What income source am I working for? Because that sets the whole scene. So I'm going to show you in the next few minutes, before I draw to a close, I'm going to show you in the next few minutes what you can do to help you presently in your job, if you have a job, to start making perhaps an increase in what you get in compensation. For many years, I didn't understand. When I worked for a company, I would demand pay raise. Now, there are a number of ways you can earn more money. You can walk to your boss and say, listen, if you don't give me more money, I'm going to leave and go work for someone else. You can say, well, this is an offer from another company. I want you to match it. You can just up and leave. You can choose to be a very unloyal employee and say, unless you pay more, I wouldn't do more. All of that will not get you your outcomes. If you want to earn more in a job, let's just assume you really have to earn more in a job. You must understand 3 basic laws. Very simple, but they govern what you earn as income from a job. Number 1, the law of compensation. Earl Nightingale said that the amount of money you earn will always be in proportion to, number 1, the need for what you do. Number 2, your ability to do it. And number 3, the level of difficulty there will be in replacing you. So the first question you ask yourself, is there a need for what I do? You know, the other day I walked into the bank and it was a different bank. It was the same bank I used to, usually go into, but it looked different. The night before, they had done a complete refurb of the bank. All of the bank tellers who would normally be standing and trying to serve and providing good value, good service to customers were all gone. And what they had now were machines. The machines could do everything the bank tellers could do. Paying check, cash, withdraw, look at your bank statement, print your statement, everything. They had one person on the side to deal with business accounts. It dawned on me that all of those jobs were made obsolete because the need for what they were doing had declined. A computer could do it better. Now, you might argue with me that it's not really fair. I'm not here to choose sides. I'm just dealing with facts. So the question I want you to ask is there a need for what I do? Second question is, am I great? Not am I good. Am I great at what I do? Martin Luther King said, if a man be called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted, or like Beethoven composed music, or like Shakespeare composed poetry. He should sweep the streets so beautifully well that all of the hosts in heaven and on earth stop and say, there goes a street sweeper who knows how to do his job. My question is, are you exceptional at what you do? Because if the answer is no, your level of compensation will seldom exceed the level of mastery and excellence in what you do. Now, I know this doesn't sound sexy. It's just a fact. It's a law. You've got to understand the law. You see, if you're great at what you do, then you automatically know the answer to number 3. How difficult would it be to replace you? Law number 2. Law number 1 was compensation. Law number 2 is the law of value. The law of value says that your compensation and what you earn will always be in proportion to the value you create. And the value you create will be based on the problems you solve. So here is a question to you. Now, this might sound as though I'm getting on your case. Maybe I am a little bit. Now, I wish a lot of these laws were taught to me very young and also very early in my career. I had to learn this towards the latter stages of my professional career when I left working for someone. I wish I knew them before. The law of value says, how great are you at solving problems? In other words, are you a problem solver? You see, if you're a great problem solver, every time you solve a problem, you leave a fragrance of your presence. Say that again. The more problems you solve and the level of excellence you put into solving problems, for every problem you solve, you leave a fragrance of your ability around that area, that environment. So people then say, you need to speak to John. If you want this done, speak to John. He's good. So my question to you is this. When your name is mentioned in your office, in your company, do they think of a problem solver? When there is a problem, does your name come up first? Because if the answer is no, then your level of compensation will be limited. Now, the people who command the best salaries usually are those who create the most value. Companies are dying to find people who can create value. So, if you want to earn more, solve more problems. But recognize something, that hard work doesn't mean you're solving problems. If you travel to Africa, if you travel to Asia, if you travel to some parts of the United States and even parts of Europe, you will find that the hardest working people in many of the continents that I just mentioned and the countries are the lowest paid. The reason is simple. They are solving a problem, but they're not creating a lot of value. So both of them go together. Solve problems, create value. Number 3, the law of profit. For many years, many people have always thought about, I want more. It's all about me. I want to earn more. Very few people go and ask their supervisors or their bosses, how can I create more profits for the company? Now understand something, every business is there to make a profit. If there is no profit, there is no business. You can have passion, you can have purpose, you can have persistence, you can have great products, but if you don't make a profit, there's no business. Except you're self-funding some charitable organization for a business. You must make a profit. Now, if you want to help the company make profits, the company will help you achieve your goals. It's a fact. So one of the questions you perhaps want to consider is this. You go up to your boss and you say, can you tell me what I can do over and above my day-to-day duties that can add more value to what you do, but also that can make more profit for the company? Because I know if the company makes more profits, then the company will compensate me more. Now, these are basic principles. These are basic philosophies. If you understand the 3 laws, you know what to do. More importantly, the 3 laws must be coexistent in the same place at the same time, meaning they don't violate each other. If you have all 3 working together, you will be compensated beyond your beliefs. As a matter of fact, I summarized the 3 of them into one sentence, one statement. The level of compensation you get will always be based on the level of service you provide. It's really that simple. Now, in terms of earning more, that's all I can say. That's all I can say. I think you have to then decide how you can serve more. The great master was asked a question. The question was simple. The question was powerful. The question was, how can I become the greatest? I think we should all ask that question regularly. How can we become the greatest? The master replied eloquently. He said, you must become the servant if you want to become the greatest. In other words, you've got to serve your talents, your gifts, your skills, serve exceptionally well, create value, provide good service, and by doing that, the more people you serve, the greater you become. Everyone that you can think about that we assign a level of greatness to served so many people. So if you want to earn more, you might want to ask that question, how can I become the greatest? Now let me move very quickly as I draw this to a close. We've talked about playing offense, and I've talked about the advantages of focusing on leveraged income over active income. I want to say something because I promised that I was going to tell you why I do not recommend increasing active income or focusing on increasing active income passionately. In engineering design, whenever we designed systems, we always used to ask the question, what does this system serve? Because there's something called a single point of failure. A single point of failure means that in the event of a catastrophic loss, that the entire operation stops. So when we design systems, we will always try to understand how critical operation was so that we can provide a level of redundancy to ensure that in the event of a failure of one system, a second system could automatically start and maintain operation. My question to you is, in your financial life, do you have a single point of failure in relation to income? Now, if you have a job, the answer is yes. If that is the only source of income you have. If it's a job, it's a single point of failure. I had that for a number of years. If you want to create wealth, you cannot rely on a single point of failure. So the reason I recommend not focusing too much on increasing your active income through a job is because you're simply trying to make and design a much better system with a point of failure. My recommendation is all that extra energy that you would have put in to earn more money, why don't you channel that time, that effort, that focus, that intelligence to learning how to become a good investor? Because investing is how you create wealth. There's so many hours in a day, 24 hours, you cannot work your way to wealth. You cannot earn your way to wealth. Now, some of you might be arguing and saying there are a number of very wealthy employees, executives in many companies, and yes, that's true. But we have 7 billion people in the world today, and we only have a few 100,000 executives across the whole world. So in terms of scale, it's out of proportion. And obviously, they pay so much in taxes. In addition to that, like everyone else, in most cases, our expenses will rise to meet the level of our income. So to focus all that energy on earning more from a single point of failure, I wouldn't recommend it. I'll recommend you take that energy and invest towards becoming better in generating other multiple income streams, because income streams from multiple sources is how wealth is multiplied. It's really that simple. So in your life, ask yourself the question, do I have a single point of failure? Now, in addition to that, if you have a job, you have unleveraged ability, meaning you have to do the work. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that you shouldn't work hard. I don't think you have to put in extra hours to get more from your work. I think you just have to be a little bit more smarter, work smarter. So for example, the average person is distracted every 25 minutes in the workplace, and it takes about 15 minutes to recover and regain your focus. So, if you simply decided to eliminate all distractions, turn off your notifications from your phone, put your phone to the side, focus on the activity, have a list of actions and to-do or outcomes for the day, go step by step. If you decided to take your lunch break an hour before the rest of the entire office, what you find is that you become more focused. And in one day, you can achieve in a day what the entire office individually would achieve in an entire week, because you have focus and you're not being distracted. You can achieve more. You just have to work smarter, meaning the extra hours you would have invested, you put that into becoming an investor. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing right things. Wealth is created through effectiveness, not efficiency. Someone once said, there's nothing so tragic as doing something so efficiently and so well that need not be done in the first place. So my recommendation to you is this: focus on creating multiple sources of income streams from investments and assets rather than a job. Now, what we've dealt with so far is the offensive side of creating wealth through a job. In tomorrow's session, I'm going to talk about the defense side, but I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to share with you a plan. The plan I'm going to share with you will guarantee financial freedom, financial wealth in less than 10 years. It's what I used. It works. I've taught this to so many people. It works. The result is always in the pudding. It works. But it works if you work it. It will work for you if you commit and you work it. So tomorrow's session will begin with talking about the offense strategy, what you can do, how you can adjust your lifestyle and start creating wealth, and how you can start generating multiple sources of income that will allow you now to then achieve time and money freedom. And once you have both, now you can play the offense strategy of generating income, but now you'll be working for the right source of income. I know we've covered a lot today. I hope it's been useful. I hope you found something worth sitting in for or listening for. I want to know where you're watching from, so send a comment. Tell me what your name is. But more importantly, tell me how all of this information can help you. I want to know what your goals are. You know, it's easy for me to talk about wealth and share my ideas and principles with you, but I want to make sure that it's useful. I want to make sure it's something you can use, and I can only do that if I know your goals. So allow me to say thank you for your time. Allow me to say thank you for joining me today. Day 4 is gone. Day 5 is going to be more interesting and more powerful. I want to thank you for your time. I wish you the best. God bless.